So you've finished your development and you've done as much as you possibly can for that section. The next stage is to produce some ideas for your final plan. Okay, you've got the majority of your ideas together, you've got a really good idea about where your project is heading. A final plan gives us that last little bit of an idea and any last minute changes you want to make before you produce your final piece. Okay, so this presentation is going to talk you through that section of your project and give you some examples about how other people have done that in the past. So at the end of the development stage, create 5 or 6 sketch images showing layout alternatives, one of which will become your final piece. Use the best of your development outcomes and use a range of techniques and media, for example, pencil, colour pencils, collage, digital, Photoshop or Illustrator. It's really important for your refinement to contain the best outcomes from your development as opposed to completely new images being included. So don't suddenly bring something out of the bag that you haven't done before. This really needs to be just moving on from the development stage into your final plans now. So bring all of your work together and draw links into what has worked well and what you need to develop further. So look back over the work you've done so far. What has been particularly good? Is the theme and focus of your final piece correct? Return back to your project brief. Does it answer what you set out to do at the start? Has your idea got all the visual elements you want to include? The background, the main image, the text? What materials are you definitely going to use? How are you going to use those materials? What's the arrangement of all of the objects in your image like? What does it look like? What's the size of your final piece going to be? What's the layout? What's the colours? What's the focal point? What are people's eyes going to be drawn to? What's the mood? It might be a good idea to start this with another mind map, supported visually with scanned elements of your project, sketches and swatches of the media, for example, paint, paper or print. So here is a student's example of their final plans before they got to their final pieces. Okay. So they've really thought about the arrangement of all of those objects and they've come up with 4 different possible alternatives. They haven't done it in full colour, but they have at the bottom of those pictures outlined what colours and what materials they might use and what they're going to include. So they've got a really good idea about which one of those they then want to produce for their actual final piece. And they've explained below each of them what they've done, how they've changed it and what they might do between this and their final piece. Okay. Here's a student's final plans for their logo. So as you can see there, they've done almost 6 different versions of their plans for the BioShock logo. This student has done their last design here before they go on to their final piece for this packaging design based on fancy pets. So they've outlined around the outside what the patterns are going to be, what colours they might use and what materials. This student is doing a set of playing cards and they've come up with some final character designs that they're going to use on those final pieces. And they've looked at the composition of the arrangement. So in this left-hand side, when I'm talking about composition, I'm talking about the arrangement of the objects. So it's the same objects, the same elements, visual elements, but arranged in different ways. So either overlapping, straightforward, or that sort of above and below picture towards that left-hand side. They've also got 4 different examples there of different backgrounds that they could use behind those pictures of the main character. This is where they went there. They then decided to move on, and that's their final piece on the right hand side. Okay, they ended up making 5 different playing cards. So that on the left hand side is their final plan, and then on the right hand side is the final piece, and you can see they've changed a few things. So that just gives you an idea about going from the final plan into the final piece itself. This student who's done an album cover for 21 Pilots, they have gone from their final plan on the left hand side into their final plans on the right hand side. There's 2 different alternatives they went forward, and then they've then developed that forward into 3 or 4 different alternatives, final plans, before going into their final pieces at the end. Okay, so really the most important thing is it's almost there, you're almost at the end, but you just need to make sure it's clear from the development stage what it is you're actually going to take forward into that final piece. So the final plans need to be clear and precise and give us an idea about the materials that you might be using and the arrangement. This is probably the best example on this image here of the final plan, and on the right hand side the final piece itself. Okay, so this one here that goes through from the final character designs through to the composition and some backgrounds, through to the final plan and the final piece. Okay, so refinement, refinement, final plan, final piece. Okay, that's the clearest one there, that gives you a really good idea about how. Now, how would you apply that to your project now? How would you go from the development stage into refinement, into final plan, before you get into your final piece or pieces? Okay, that's clearly the next stage, right? Hopefully that explains the refinement and final plan stage. If you've got any questions, please let me know and I will try and get back to you. Okay, the next video will be about the final pieces themselves. Thank you then. Goodbye.